Week 11 of the NFL season has come and gone, and last week I went 11-3. We've been on a pretty good run of late. My ranking has certainly gone up in a lot of the pick'ems that I am a part of, but still can do better, especially after that Cleveland game last week. That was a disaster. Atlanta over Denver, boy, was that a bad pick. And I'm pretty sure most people got the San Francisco versus Seattle game wrong because, Seattle's just not a good team, but San Francisco isn't a very good team either. And yes, you may say that San Francisco has a lot of injuries, and that is definitely true. But even still, Brock Purdy has had a decent year, but not the greatest year either. He had a couple of, had at least one terrible interception last week that was pretty bad. But we'll go through it as always. Games 1 to the Thursday night game to the Monday night game. No weird games again. I think we're basically done with the international series for this year, which is a good thing because largely they were all duds. They were basically all duds, and let's just forget those games happen. Let's focus on where the real games matter at home stadiums in the NFL. That's the only ones that really matter. But let me know what you think down below, and let's get to it. Starting with our first game of the week. The Thursday night game. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns, again, disappointed me last week for sure. I would have expected Nick Chubb to go off, and he really didn't. I would have expected Myles Garrett and the rest of the defense to go off on the Saints offensive line all day. Me being a Saints fan, I did not have a lot of hope for last week. Then out of nowhere, Taysom Hill has one of his unicorn games. He doesn't have a lot of these, but he does have the ability to have these games. For 200 total yards, 3 touchdowns, where the fuck did that come from? You can't predict these games with Taysom Hill, and as much as we want to have him in our fantasy lineups on a week-to-week basis, he's just not the best option. But if you did have him in your lineup last week, you probably won, because it's hard to not win when you score over 40 points in a fantasy league. But, it happened. And he had a really good game. But back to Pittsburgh, Cleveland. Pittsburgh coming off the big win over Baltimore again, showing their sheer dominance of the Baltimore Ravens. Steelers just know how to beat them. And also, Lamar Jackson doesn't know how to play against Pittsburgh. Also doesn't help when your supposedly best kicker of all time misses 2 chip shot field goals that he should normally make in his sleep. But this game, it's in Cleveland, so maybe we give Cleveland the edge. But, Jameis Winston did go throw for nearly 400 yards last week, had a couple of really nice throws as well. But again, the rest of the team is just not all there. And Pittsburgh's defense is just firing on all cylinders. TJ Watt is on a torrid pace like always. The rest of that defense, Minka Fitzpatrick is one of the most underrated safeties in the league. He's just straight up fantastic. And just the offense may not be great. Russell Wilson had a really bad interception last week, but Najee just keeps chugging along. Jaylen Warren is slowly getting more and more carries, slowly getting more opportunities out there. So when it comes to all said and done, it is an AFC North showdown for sure. But in the end, Pittsburgh should win pretty handily. Although considering these games are probably going to be low scoring. So let's say 17-10. 17-10 sounds like a good score. Not going to go off. George Pickens should be able to have a good game in this one. Najee should be around 70 to 80 yards rushing with maybe a touchdown. Russell Wilson around 150 to 200 yards and maybe a touchdown or two. But all said and done, and as long as you have Chris Boswell, who's just been automatic, Steelers are going to win again, be 9-2. And considering them going into the year, no one would have expected the Pittsburgh Steelers to be 9-2 after week 12. But that's probably the most likely outcome. Next. Minnesota versus Chicago. Chicago coming up that absolutely heartbreaking, soul-crushing way to lose last week. I can't imagine a worse soul-crushing loss than that. Well, I suppose if I was since I'm a Packers fan and they don't block that and they lose to the Bears, that would have been pretty terrible. But I know there's a lot of talk. I've heard some talk out there like, oh, it's a leverage play. it was illegal. It's like that wasn't leverage. If you say that's leverage, then every field goal attempt to block is illegal. So anybody complaining about that, saying that Packers got away with one, no, they did not. But Minnesota, for all their great record and everything, they still don't look great. Now, yes, they went up against Tennessee, who sneakily has one of the best passing defenses in the league, and they were able to hold Justin Jefferson in check once again, TJ Hawkinson in check. Darnold still got open for a couple of good touchdowns, but I mean, the game was way closer than it really was. I mean, Tennessee really did have a chance to win. It just didn't make enough plays. I mean, but still, the game was a lot closer than you would think. Chicago had a really great game last week, but again, you are hampered by Matt Eberflus. You just are. He's just not a great coach. He may be a good D coordinator, and that certainly is the case. But as a head coach, he is awful, just dreadful. And the McCaskies just don't fire head coaches in the season. That's why he still has a job. But unless they make some miracle, like they win the rest of their games, which is very unlikely considering the schedule they have, it's just going to be another lost season. And I expect Minnesota to win. Sure, Chicago should have a good chance to win. If they play like they did last week, they should have a really good go. Especially if Caleb Williams can continue to grow and he can continue to get out of the pocket and make runs like he did last week, then they have a decent chance to win. Also, DeAndre Swift, Roshan Johnson, and others have to get going on the ground as well. Rome Odunze has to keep being spectacular. DJ Moore had a decent game last week. Keenan Allen too. It's just things gotta keep going along. They need to keep improving. The Thomas Brown offense needs to keep graduating as well. So they do have a decent chance to win, but just the Bears are just a cursed franchise. And yes, they're at home, but Minnesota, their defense has been pretty darn solid for most of the year. Sam Darnold still has an interception, but mostly doesn't make too many mistakes. Aaron Jones is reliable. Not great, but reliable. I expect Justin Jefferson to have a bounce-back game this week. This should be a really good game for Justin Jefferson to come out, have 100 yards, maybe a touchdown. It just screams that kind of game. Also kind of screams like a big TJ Hawkinson game, in my opinion. But, man, Chicago can play like they did last week. They have a decent chance to win. If they go back to the way they did a couple weeks ago against the Patriots and other teams, it's going to be a rough day. But I will give the win to Minnesota. Should be relatively close. 24-21. Minnesota's the favorite. So as a result, they are a slight favorite for me against the Bears. Next. Detroit and Indy. Indy with the big win over the Jets. I mean, it will kind of dicey there for the Colts for a while, but the Jets just make mistakes and the Colts are able to come back. Anthony Richardson finally had a really good game, showed why he was drafted as high as he was. The Lions just beat the fucking shit out of the Jaguars. I mean that wasn't even a game. It was just a mercy killing. Literally, the Lions ripped the Jaguars' guts out like they were chewing on a gazelle. That's how bad it was. At no point in that game did Jacksonville have a chance to win. At no point was that game competitive. And to be honest, it could be the same this week. Now again, the Colts are definitely a much better team than the Jacksonville Jaguars. But Anthony Richardson still hasn't been able to put back-to-back games together, at least really good ones, so that'll be a real test for him. And despite losing Aiden Hutchinson, the Lions still have a great pass rush. They still have a decent secondary, although they do have the chance to get burned a lot, and this could be a good game for Anthony Richardson to throw a couple of passes to the likes of Alec Pierce or Josh Downs. Does anybody know when Michael Pittman is returning? I know he's been hurt, but it would be nice for them to get going. Jonathan Taylor hasn't had a great game the past couple of weeks, so if the Colts really want to win, they're going to need to get him going for sure. Jonathan Taylor is going to have at least 80 to 85 yards, I'd say, and for sure get into the end zone at least once for them to really stand a good chance at winning. Their defense do have good players, but as an overall unit, they're towards the bottom half of the league. They're just not that consistent. They haven't been all year long, and against an offense like the Lions, who have been firing on all cylinders. Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs look to have another big game because the Colts definitely have a bad rushing defense, that's for sure. And Jared Goff has been reliable. And other than that 5-interception game against the Houston Texans, which they still won, I don't give the Colts much hope to win. I really don't. I don't think it's really going to be a very close game overall. In the end, I think the Lions win 30-21. I mean, Indy has a chance to stay in it, but they got to keep the mistakes down. They absolutely have to cut the mistakes down. Anthony Richardson has to be consistent. No bad interceptions, no overthrows, no underthrows, which he has been known to do at a time. He has a good arm. He has all the natural gifts in the world. If Anthony Richardson wants to announce to the world that I'm here, this is my time, and I am a quarterback of the future, they win this game. It's in Indy, so they have the home crowd on their side, but they're both dome teams, so that really doesn't matter. So I'm going to give the game to the Lions, but the Colts are able to keep the mistakes down. They do have a chance, but if they start throwing the ball around like Anthony Richardson has been back-to-back games, he usually doesn't follow up a great game with another great game. It's going to be a long day. Next. New England versus Miami. The Miami Dolphins coming off 2 wins, but now apparently everybody thinks Miami Dolphins are going to make the playoffs. I mean, even Colin Cowherd had Miami in his top 10. Okay. They beat the Las Vegas Raiders, so not much there. Sure, they beat the Rams, but I'm chalking that up more to the Rams offense just being terrible that night, more so than the Miami Dolphins being genuinely fantastic. Miami goes as far as Tua goes, and if Tua can keep getting better and better than he was earlier in the season, they have a chance to maybe eke out a playoff spot. But considering the level of competition in the AFC, it's going to be a really tough climb for them to really make it out of it. They're going to have to really go on a stretch run to really make a chance. I mean, they're playing. I mean, they have a very, very small chance to win the AFC East. I mean, this weekend, I do believe if Miami loses, Buffalo wraps up the division in Week 12, and they're not even playing this week. So, as long as Devon Achane can keep going, because he's basically taken over that running back position. He's the main horse going forward. As long as he stays healthy, he's going to be out there. He's going to be getting the majority of the carries. Tyreek Hill is definitely the best option as a weapon. Jalen Waddle has been a massive disappointment this year. He had that one game earlier in the season, but I would have expected Jalen Waddle to benefit from Tua coming back, but just hasn't been so. He has just not had the same rapport that Tyreek Hill has, and even still, Tyreek Hill hasn't had the greatest resurgence as well. He's been dealing with an injury. So as long as Tua can keep the mistakes down, I know I always say this, the mistakes are the reason why teams lose. Turnovers are the ultimate equalizer in the NFL. As long as Miami can keep the turnovers down, especially with a kind of turnover proficient defense like the Patriots, they have a chance to win. As long as Drake May plays well, New England has a chance to win. This could be a really, really close game. Both these teams played each other pretty well. The first game, well, I wouldn't say well. They were just playing not to lose, basically, and Tua wasn't playing in that game. I expect Tua to have a big game this week. New England just got torched by the Rams for over 4 passing touchdowns. It was really ugly. Drake May is the only reason why you watch the Patriots. As long as Drake May is out there, they have somewhat of a chance to win. Ramondre Stevenson has been pretty up and down for most of the year. As long as he can keep going against that defense of the Dolphins, they have a chance. But again, it's going to come all down to turnovers in this game. Drake May has thrown a couple of interceptions the last couple of games. Tua has thrown some interceptions as well. But yeah, as long as Tua can keep playing the way he has and keep improving, Miami's probably going to win. But if they lose without any chance to win that division, and then it makes it even harder for them to make a real legitimate shot at a playoff spot. So I will give the Dolphins the win, 27-20. Pretty close all through the game, but I think New England just comes up a little bit short. But New England's able to force Tua into some interceptions, cause some turnovers, and then New England does still have a chance to win because Drake May really is the future of that franchise. He really is. They really got a good one in him at quarterback. He's going to keep getting better. Don't sell him down the river. He's going to be a good quarterback in this league for years to come. He's definitely has him more than what Mac Jones has. Although you can argue the Patriots have ruined Mac Jones. But New England has a chance to win, but I will give it to Miami in the end. Next. Tampa Bay versus the Giants. The Giants are terrible. Going to Tommy DeVito at quarterback. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers may be getting Mike Evans, which will be a huge boost. They have a great two-man headed beast at running back. Bucky Irving as the main rushing option. Rachaad White as the main receiving option. Mike Evans will have a real... If he comes back and is ready to go, Mike Evans, I expect him to go over 100 yards, a couple touchdowns. The Giants defense has been really bad against the pass lately, and just not really good against the run either. Supposedly, the people in the Giants have said Tommy DeVito, well, at least according to Dexter Lawrence, I believe, said that Tommy DeVito is the best option, which is really sad because he's not all that great. But I don't know why it took the Giants so long to realize that Daniel Jones wasn't the answer, that he's not going anywhere, he's not getting any better. Maybe Tommy DeVito can find some rapport with Malik Neighbors out there. I mean, it can't be any worse than what Daniel Jones was doing. I mean, you got this great young wide receiver who could be a fixture in the league for years to come, and Daniel Jones can find him to save his life. So as a result, Tommy DeVito comes in. The Italian Renaissance is back on in the NFL. But Tommy DeVito should have a decent game. Tampa Bay doesn't have the greatest defense in the world, so I think this could be a shootout. Really, I really do think this could be a shootout, high-scoring game. Tampa Bay really playing for their playoffs lives, and after the way Atlanta's been playing, I know Tampa Bay lost out, got swept by Atlanta. But Tampa Bay has a legitimate shot to win the division still, even still, because of the way Atlanta implodes. Whenever they get too far above 500, they start to lose, and badly. Atlanta has been terrible the last couple of weeks. And Tampa Bay, despite their issues, and now that Mike Evans is back, most likely, he's ready to play, they could reel off some wins, and they could really give a good shot and at least at a wild card, and maybe knock the Falcons off the top spot in the NFC South. I mean, they do have a legitimate chance to get it, and I think it all starts with this week. Tampa Bay wins 30-24. Relatively high-scoring game. I think Tampa Bay just has a little bit more. They have a better quarterback, better wide receivers, better running backs. That's all we really need. Tampa Bay wins. Next. Kansas City versus Carolina. Carolina, welcome to the blood machine, because that's what it's going to be this week. It's going to be a bloodbath for Carolina. Kansas City is going to win. If Kansas City doesn't win, then you have real legitimate concerns. Because Patrick Mahomes, as great as he is as a quarterback, he's been really bad this year. He's leading the league in interception now, I do believe, with 12. I think it's 12, 11 or 12. Patrick Mahomes has not been good all year. And that offense has been pretty disjointed for most of the year. Kareem Hunt still number one running back there for the foreseeable future until Pacheco comes back, and even then might still maintain number one man going into the playoffs. Defense has been the best in the league. They've been great at stopping the run, great against the pass. Kansas City's defense can do it all. And with how badly Carolina's offense has been, it's not going to be a good day to be a Panther. It looks like Jonathan Brooks should return this week for the Panthers, so that might be a bright light. But Chuba Hubbard is number one back for now. I mean, unless Jonathan Brooks comes out and just owns the Chiefs this week and goes off against the number one rushing defense in the league, then it's just going to be a bad day to be a Panther. Bryce Young doesn't really stand a chance this week. I expect him to throw at least a couple interceptions this week. Kansas City, even though their offense has been disjointed, they should get off pretty well tonight or this week. DeAndre Hopkins should have a pretty good game. Just not a lot else to say. I don't think Carolina really stands a chance. Kansas City wins 30-14. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be very close. And even though it's on the road, Kansas City, having lost their first game of the year after going on a 15-game winning streak dating back to last season, Kansas City's going to ride big time this week. Kansas City wins 30-14. Next. Tennessee and Houston, a sneaky matchup this week. Houston with the big win over the Cowboys. Tennessee with the loss to Minnesota, even though it was a lot closer than this box score would say. Houston definitely looks to be more so back with Nico Collins in the fold. Definitely Nico Collins being out there helps make CJ Stroud look a lot better out there. But even so, CJ Stroud had his mistakes last week. It was just because they were playing against such a poor defense. This is a divisional game, and yes, Tennessee is not a good team, but like I've said before, Tennessee is a sneaky good pass defense. They've been one of the best against the pass all year long and held many a good wide receiver to bad games. They've just gotten beat a couple or pretty badly by some really good teams just because they're just as good as their defense is. It's hard to really expect them to do really well against the Lions, but to their credit, they held up the Minnesota Vikings. Jefferson didn't have a great game. Aston had a long touchdown, but that was about it. TJ Hawkinson didn't really get anything going. Aaron Jones didn't really get anything going. And it's just, if Will Levis didn't make mistakes, Tennessee has a real shot to win or against certain teams. Houston is looking, they need another win. It was a nice get-right game last week against the Cowboys, but still have things to work on for sure. Mixon has been all-world all year long. As long as he keeps chugging, Houston is probably going to win more games than they would lose. And as long as Nico Collins out there, I like Tank Dell. I think he's a good wide receiver, but Nico Collins is the number one horse in that wide receiver stable, for sure. He's definitely the best. It's not even close. It really is, and we really saw. I mean, Tank Dell had a real shot with Nico Collins out to really establish himself as a top wide receiver in the offense. And like, he's good, he's decent. I mean, he'll make a good catch here and there. But in terms of overall production versus Nico Collins, he just doesn't compare. Nico Collins is the main man in that stable, and he's going to receive a lot of the benefit of it. Now, Tank Dell may receive less attention because Nico Collins is going to suck up that attention, but still, more times than not, Nico Collins is going to get the ball over Tank Dell. And as well as Joe Mixon. Well, I would like to think this game will be close, at least early on, but I think in the long run, Houston, back at home, have the crowd on their side. Houston wins 27-17. Close early on for the most part, but Will Levis would make enough mistakes for Houston to pull away, and their defense should be able to get through to that Will Levis this week and cause some havoc. Will Anderson and everybody involved. But Houston should have a good game, and Tennessee, they're just playing for next year at this point. Next. Denver versus Las Vegas. It's another sneaky game. Denver with a huge win over Atlanta. Las Vegas with another loss to Miami, even though the game looked a lot closer than it actually was. Brock Bowers is the future great tight end of this league. If you have him in your fantasy league or your dynasty league, definitely you want to keep him for years to come. Even in your standard fantasy keeper leagues. I have him in a couple of my leagues, and I will consider keeping him because he's just. It's hard to really find good tight ends like him in the league today. I mean, sure, there are a few out there, but he's the future Travis Kelce of the league. He's that good. I mean, he broke the record for rookie tight ends last week for receptions with like 13. He had over 100 yards, had a touchdown. Of course, the Raiders shut down his interview when he was asked about the Trump dance, because of course they did. But the Raiders are not a good team other than that. I mean, Brock Bowers is the main reason why you watch that team. Denver, their defense has been playing really well. Bo Nix has been playing really well. Their running attack has been pretty up and down. I mean, I thought Audric Estime would really take over in the carries last week, but then it went right back to Javonte. So it seems like there's a real stable there of running backs, with no one running back having or a bunch of great games in a row over the other. It seems like it's going to be probably a different good running back every week. But as long as that defense is the way it is, I know earlier in the year, for the longest time, Denver just couldn't beat the Raiders. But the Raiders are just so bad. Denver should win. But I suppose if Denver loses, it's like old times. They can't beat the Raiders. But Denver should win and continue charging to a potential playoff spot, winning 24-18, something weird like that. But Denver wins, and Raiders, again, are just another team playing for next year. Who knows if Antonio Pierce will stay around for long, because I mean, even he has to see that this team's just not going anywhere. And, I mean, they're not just a big quarterback away from competing. They're a lot of everything away from really competing. And he might just want to cut his losses and find a better team. Who knows? We'll see. Next. Arizona versus Seattle. A very good-looking game for sure. A sneaky game. Arizona coming off the bye. Seattle with a big win over San Francisco in the last seconds. Arizona has a real shot to win this division. They really do. They don't do anything particularly well, but they're just efficient. James Conner is a very reliable running back who gets you close to 70 to 80 yards every game and maybe a touchdown, and is a pretty good receiving threat as well. Marvin Harrison has been up and down for most of the year, but when he's on, he's really on. Kyler Murray definitely had a great game against the Jets before their bye week. Seattle has been good. Geno had a decent game last week. JSN has been definitely rising as well as a top wide receiver for the Seahawks. Their defense has definitely been playing better. It was definitely played pretty well against San Francisco, but then again, San Francisco just got cocky at times, so that certainly helps. It's going to be a close game. It's in Seattle, but it's not like they really have that 12-man advantage anymore. So Arizona, because of the way they run the ball, because the way they just play it consistently and don't make too many mistakes, I think Arizona's going to win. Arizona wins 20... I'll give them 24 to 21. Close game. Comes down to a Geno Smith interception at the end. But Seattle does have a really good chance to win, but I just think Arizona just is a better team overall. Next. Philadelphia versus the Rams in LA. So it's going to be mostly Eagles fans. That's always the case. Eagles have been on a tear, winning 6 in a row. The Rams got a big win over New England last week, but still, the game was a lot closer than it probably should have been. Philadelphia, in the last 6 games, have been great against number 1 wide receivers on other teams, holding them to around 113 yards a game, something like that, and a touchdown. They've only given out 1 touchdown to receivers in the last 6 games. Ouch. Yikes. That's bad. And the Rams, yes, they have 2 great wide receivers in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, but Eagles have been playing so well in their secondary that it's not going to be a good game for the Rams. So as a result of that, Kieran Williams is going to have to get it going. If he can't, it's going to be a long day for the Rams. I like Matthew Stafford to still have a decent game because he's a warrior. He's a really good quarterback. If anything, he belongs in the Hall of Fame more than Eli Manning does. The fact that Eli Manning is even being considered for the Hall of Fame is a travesty. On a side note, I'm sorry. Jim Plunkett has the same era-adjusted stats. Just wasn't as big of a pass-happy league as Eli Manning, but also has 2 Super Bowl rings. But he's not in the Hall of Fame. At least I don't believe he is. Maybe he got in posthumously, but yeah. Eli Manning is not a Hall of Fame quarterback. But back to the game, Philadelphia should win this pretty handily. Barkley has been great all year long. I expect him to go off once again over 100 yards, maybe 120, 130 yards rushing, maybe some receiving yards, and 2-3 touchdowns. Jalen Hurts should have a couple rushing touchdowns as well, like he does every game. A.J. Brown hasn't been the same this year for the most part. It's been the whole Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley show, but I just think the Eagles are just a way better team than the Rams, and the Rams really need this win to stay close in the race for the NFC West. But it's not going to be a good game for the Rams. It's just not. It is the Sunday night game, so it's probably going to be a lot closer than we think. But Eagles win 35-24. Rams give it a good push at the end, but Eagles just have too much firepower, and that defense has been playing so well. Next. Baltimore versus the Chargers. And what might be the best game of the week? Baltimore losing to Pittsburgh. The Chargers nearly charging last week against the Bengals, but the Bengals just bengled more, and as a result, the Chargers win. J.K. Dobbins had a didn't really have the greatest game until that last drive where he had the rushing touchdown and made his stats look a lot prettier than they really were, because up until the third quarter, he had like 6 carries for 7 yards and a touchdown. Not really good. And I just continue to see, in terms of fantasy, J.K. Dobbins, I just continue to see him trending down, just because of the timeshare that he has with Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards has been outgaining J.K. Dobbins for the most part. Sure, in the end, J.K. Dobbins outgained Gus Edwards, but still Gus Edwards had more carries than J.K. Dobbins through most of the game, but that was the largest part to Justin Herbert. And they're going up against Baltimore, who doesn't have a good passing defense. So I expect Justin Herbert to have another great game. I expect, in terms of offense for Baltimore, Lamar should have a decent bounce back game. Derrick Henry should have a decent bounce back game. Should be able to go off against the Chargers defense. The Chargers defense has been pretty strong for the most part. They haven't really played any really great offensive teams for a while. So I guess they did play Cincinnati last week, but kind of got cooked for most of the game. Definitely down the stretch. Like I said, they nearly charged that game away. It's going to be a really close game. Arguably the best game of the week. I think although in the end, that Baltimore wins 27-21. Going to be close. I think Baltimore has a little bit more firepower. They have arguably the front runner for MVP, other than Josh Allen. And as good as the Chargers defense has been, they haven't played against any really great offensive teams for a while. And like I said, they got kind of torched by Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Ja'Marr Chase again. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. As always, like I have been doing the past couple weeks, I'm going to be doing another game along with my weekly Packer review. According to the poll, it was Washington versus Dallas. I don't know why you picked that game, but I will preview it nonetheless. It's going to be a fucking bloodbath for Dallas, that's for sure. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. And as always, have a great day. And as always, go Pack Go, and God bless.